1,000 crore worth his portfolio in New York. His interdisciplinary experiences gave him an edge to reshape how medicines can be made accessible and affordable in India. And so he is the CEO and founder of eVitalRx. I request Dr. Milan Satya to felicitate Dr. Kaushal Shah with applause.
Let's have a second speaker here, Dr. Jayati. I invite him on the stage. Dr. Jay is having around 2 decades of pharmaceutical and clinical research experience and worked in the leading pharmaceutical and clinical research as well as technological organizations like Tata Consultancy Services. He is the recipient of India's premier National R&D CSIR project and has published several research papers in international as well as national scientific journals. I request Dr. Sunita to welcome Dr. Jain on behalf of the committee. Dr. Kaushal, please you can. Oh, yes, sure.
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. This is truly an honor for being able to speak in front of such a illustrious alumni and future alumni as well. One of the decisions I had to make was whether I should be, relating to alumni or whether I should be relating to the future students, especially given that I'm right in the middle, graduating in 2006. I'm sorry to say no offense, but I decided to go with the future. So I am going to build on your experience and knowledge and everything you have, but it's truly about the future, right? So hopefully this is going to be much more entertaining and engaging for the students here, because that's really what matters. What's in the future, not the past. So the topic I'm going to be speaking about is called empowering pharmacists and enriching communities via technology. Sorry for the long title, but I think it's really important. Try to put it in a title that at least explains something. So like I said, I graduated in 2006, and I'm going to talk about myself a little later on, actually, not in the beginning. But before that, I want to talk about something else. So, considering we have a lot of academics into the audience, I needed to start with some paper that was published in 1970, somewhere around 1970. That's the result on the left side. There's a chart there. And without going into details of what the chart says, I want to talk about the 2 pictures on the right side. Can anybody recognize what that bird is? Not that I'm a bird watcher, but is there anybody who can recognize what that bird is? Yes, it's a condor, right? It's a condor. And what's the significance here about the chart? I'll tell you what it is. So somebody did a study that how many, for each different species in the animal kingdom, how many calories are being spent for every kilogram of weight per kilometer to move, right? So if any animal that weighs about 1 kilogram, and if he wants to move 1 kilometer, how many calories are being spent? And the most efficient animal was condor, right? It's right on top. And they did, of course, the same study for the human, right? For each kilogram of the body weight, if they want to move 1 kilometer, how many calories are spent? Because it would tell you how efficient the animal is. Unfortunately, humans did not do well. Humans were almost at the 70th percentile, or so basically bottom third. Humans were in the bottom third of all the animals that they studied. Like I said, condor is the number 1. Does anybody know how many condors are there in the world right now? I just Googled it right before the presentation. It's 113 condors only. They're on the verge of extinction, which I knew, but I didn't know it was as small as 113 condors. How many humans are there? Too many. 8 billion. 8 billion of us, right? So how did that happen? We're not efficient, and yet here we are, 8 billion of us, doing amazing things every single day. And condor, which is really efficient, only 130 left. The same study added one more thing, and that's here. They did the same study for each kilogram of weight for 1 kilometer, but this time they put a man on a bike. Guess what? We blew away condor completely out of the water. We are 40% more efficient than a condor for each kilogram of weight for each kilometer in terms of calorie usage. That's Louis Armstrong, by the way. So really, really, really efficient. Why am I talking about all this thing? So what we are doing, what we are building is we are building a bicycle for the pharmacists. We want to make pharmacists more efficient, right? And that's what the title of the talk says, empowering pharmacists. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build a bike for a pharmacy. Bike, sorry, I spent 16 years in the US, so we started calling bike. We don't really call bike here, but we started, so bike or bicycle is the same thing. So we're trying to build a bicycle for the pharmacies. One of the other things I wanted to talk about, so when I was a student in LM, one of the things I hated, which I'm pretty sure all of you also hate, is remembering all these contradictions and the side effects and usage. And I remember one thing was that every single time, nausea, vomiting. Just put nausea, vomiting. If you don't know anything else, put nausea, vomiting. Right? So that's one thing I hated as well. So I'm sure all of you can relate. And some of the pharmacists, Madhav sir earlier talked about a lot of contradictions. You must have overwhelmed. And they have experience, amazing experience of 30, 40 years of running a pharmacy, being a community pharmacist. So they know all these things. But I'm pretty sure for you guys, it's very, very, very intimidating to remember all these details. Like, yeah, I want to do great stuff like you guys did, but I don't want to remember all these things, right? And I can relate to that. I don't want to remember anything either. I hate to say it, but this is true. I don't remember any structures. I don't remember any. I don't remember any class. I don't remember any structures. I hope you take this book down. But so this is what I mean by we want to build a bicycle for the pharmacies, right? So let's get to it. So what are the problems in community pharmacies? We talked about community pharmacies early on, right? So some of the problems, pharmacies. So they don't have, sorry, before I get into that, earlier, Mr. Abdullah and Madhav sir also talked about community pharmacies. That is in US. Like I said, I spent 16 years in US, I still live there. Certain things we talked about over the lunch that we take it for granted in US, right? Medical history, of course, is available. What's the big deal? We don't have that kind of infrastructure here in the United States, in India. So, my topic will be more like a bridging a gap between the US and India, especially where India is moving forward and what are the missing portion of it. And some of them are not missing portions, some of them is just different. Like for example, in US, almost all medications are being paid by the insurance. In India, almost all medications are not being paid by the insurance, right? It's being paid by out of pocket. So not everything that is applicable there can be applicable here. So I'm trying to build something, a scenario that is more like a bridging between two countries, and especially more due to context of India. Right? So one of the things in community pharmacies here is the lack of medical history. As a pharmacist, you just don't have any access to patient history, or let alone history, because you don't have access to patient presence. You don't know what other medications they are on. You don't know what else do they take on. Are they pregnant? Breastfeeding, so on and so forth. A lot of other questions you might have. The second thing is, and we have to be realistic. Not all pharmacies are run by licensed, experienced pharmacists all the time. Yes, they may be licensed. They are running the pharmacy, but it's impractical to even believe that the pharmacy is present 12 hours a day, 7 days a week at the pharmacy. So they don't have technical know-how or counseling skills, right? And the last one is, they want to help with medical adherence, right? I mean, they also benefit from it, right? They'll make more money if you stick to your medicines on time and, if you're taking your medicines. But they don't have enough tools to help you with medical adherence. So that's for the pharmacy. For the patients, same thing, right? Medical adherence, gaps in treatment, it's the same thing. They don't have any mechanisms to stick to it. Even I struggle myself to stick to sometimes medication, right? My parents, I don't have any tools to help my patients. Mother said, he was not joking. We spoke on the phone, and I did tell him, I said, I'll be more than happy to pay 1,000 rupees a month if somebody could go my home when I'm in US most of the time and help my parents to make sure to sort through their medications and so on and so forth. He was not kidding. He actually talked about that. Second is unable to find affordable alternatives, right? How many times you guys have seen firsthand or somebody, friend or family or something, that they were unable to find affordable alternatives. And the last one is, somebody said earlier, I forgot who that was, but they say, when you show up to a pharmacy, I think it was that when you show up to a pharmacy, you are probably in the worst state of mental and physical health to be waiting and, looking for your medications, right? It's not like going to a restaurant or a movie theater when you are in the best state of mind. You are in the worst state of mind when you are going to the pharmacy. So convenience of online ordering. You want to order from online. You also want to make sure that you order from somebody you trust, but there's not mechanism to do so either. So, and all these problems are really results of three things. One is connectivity in communication. Communication between who? Communication between pharmacists and patients. There's a disconnectivity, right? That's one reason. Second is, like I said, technical know-how. Yes, after working for 40 years, you know all these things, but what if I was just starting and I'm like this guys who don't like to remember all these details, right? Which I don't. I still don't. I don't want to remember all these details. And the last one is comprehensive product catalog, which is more technical things. India, even in 2022, we don't have a catalog of all the medications that are approved by the government with all that metadata like API, formulation, manufacturer name, all that kind of stuff. There is no centralized government-approved database. So these three things are really missing, which is causing all these kind of different problems. So I want you to imagine a scenario or an environment where there's seamless communication channel, like I said, between pharmacists and patients, right? The knowledge and information is available and accessible, but not just accessible, it has to be accessible by the right person at the right time. Mr. Abuwala said something really good, which is buck stops here, which is a famous quote by one of the ex-president of the United States. I forgot who that was. But really, a retail pharmacy, the community pharmacy is where the professionalism stops and it gets over to the consumer, right? So the information that we have in pharmacopoeia or wherever else has to be available and accessible. Accessible not in terms of just being able to look up, but being able to understood at the right person, at the right time. So that's another imagination I want you to have. And the last one is, like I said, comprehensive product catalog, right? Imagine every single medicine being sold in this country have their pictures, their tablets, packages, API, formulation, manufacturer name, and other contradictions and everything along with it. So that scenario sounds great, right? I mean, that might solve a lot of problems that may help you not being needed to remember all these details that you don't want to remember. So that's what we do. That's exactly what we do, right? The company that I started with some of the guys from Ahmedabad, we are building the tech infrastructure for the retail pharmacy. That's eVitalRx. Now, on the left side, there are pharmacies that are connected to us on the platform. Left side. And the right side, there are patients. They're communicating to each other through their infrastructure. But for this group, it's also very important, and especially those who are experienced and much more advanced in their careers, the top portion, the information base. The information, the contradictions, the contradictions to the food, duplicative in nature, things like that. That's what we are building in terms of information base, right? So we're building this information base that could be made available, and we'll get into more detail. So right now it might sound abstract, into this infrastructure. So infrastructure is not just a software that allows you to do certain things, but also helps the person who's dispensing at the retail pharmacy, at the community pharmacy, to have that information. Before we go any further, I want to emphasize this particular portion. See, the density of knowledge in pharmacy space that we have in this room is enormous. Right? It could be probably, especially LMCP campus. I mean, if you think about the density of the knowledge per person in LM College of Pharmacy is probably the highest density of information in this space in the country. But LMCP is not where the patients come. Right? Patients go to different places. So my whole mission here is how do I make this sort of density available to the each and every pharmacy and ultimately to the patient. But they don't speak the same language as we do. They speak a different language, and not language as in Tamil or Gujarati. They understand differently, and make sure it's available easily as well. You cannot make it more difficult. How many of you have actually went to a library and looked up pharmacopoeia in the last 1 month? Be honest. I know the answer, so be honest. That's less than 10%, I think, right? But how many of you don't mind and probably have gone on pharmacopoeia online on your phone in the last 1 month? Right? So a lot more, of course. Why? Because it's accessible. It's easy. Nobody wants to go to the library. I wouldn't go to the library anymore. Right? So we want to make sure that that kind of density of information is available at each and every pharmacy as well, not just with us. And that's what makes a difference. And that's what we're doing at eVitalRx. So, like I said, how do we empower pharmacy? We do a lot of things for pharmacy, but I want to focus on the things that we do that are more relevant to this audience. So how do we empower pharmacy? So we build certain features that really help them. One of the features is they can send pill reminders or refill reminders to patients, right? You go to a pharmacy, you say, I'm a chronic patient of blood pressure, diabetes, whatever it is. They set up the date, based on the dosage that you're getting, automatically you get a push notification through an app or WhatsApp. Say, hey, I think it's about time to get a refill. But this is what we launched recently, which is not just refill reminder, we also launched pill reminders. Because a lot of patients are, struggling with. Madhu sir gave an example of metoprolol, that people forget to do, right? People just forget it, and it happens. I forget it. So they get pill reminders. Now, here's what I want to talk about. It's not just enough to send, and this is one thing where we have to become more empathetic to the patient that we serve. It's not just enough to send a reminder, hey, it's time to take medicine. What if the person does not know how to read, or does not know how to differentiate between two medicines they're taking? What happens then? So what did we do? We have started taking pictures of each and every medicine out there, so that you may not be able to read the spelling, but you can still identify based on color and the size of the pill or the size of the package, and you can use that image. So this is where the empathy walks in, right? Empathy gets in. Empathy is being able to relate to your patients. And that's what we do. So not only we send the reminders, but we send the reminders along with the pictures. Hey, it's 8 a.m., you're supposed to take this medication. And this is all done by the community pharmacy. We don't do any of this. We just provide technical infrastructure for that. So that's one of the features. What else do we do? Check for drug-drug interactions based on prescriptions, right? You go to a pharmacy, there are three or 5 medications in the same prescriptions. We have the database of which are the contradictions. If there is any contradictions within the same prescriptions, it will flag the pharmacy. It will flag the pharmacy. So pharmacy does not have to remember. Just like I started the presentation saying, I don't want to remember it. I don't want to remember. But can I do, if somebody pops onto my computer and say, hey, you can dispense these two things together, you know what you're doing. Can I do that much? Yes, I can do that much. Right? So that we started there. That's still in beta because we're still building the database for all these drug interactions. That's one thing in beta right now. The last one, access complete medication history of the fingertip. Patient comes in, you put their phone number on, you have access to every single prescription they have ever gotten from us. From any of our pharmacies, not just our pharmacy. So let's say I have 2 customers on this platform. You go to one pharmacy sometimes, you go to another pharmacy sometimes. Like Madhu sir said, Walgreens has 8,000 locations, right? Now, of course, Walgreens is not our customer, unfortunately, or fortunately. You can have medication history at your fingertips everywhere. And that's exactly what we are doing for pharmacies in India. So patient walks in, you put their name, and look at the bottom, not only their names, their images as well. Again, the pharmacy might be employing some guy who's not a pharmacist, may or may not be able to relate to that particular medicine all the time. Plus, it's just easier to, we have, one of the conviction I talk about all the time is, we were human beings, we started communicating through hieroglyphics into the ancient ages, then we invented a language, and now we're back to the images, right? All of you guys are mostly communicating through emojis anymore. You don't text anymore, you just send emojis. So images we are, quite heavy on. So access complete medication history. But how can we enrich communities? When I say communities, I mean patients. So the counterpart is the patient. This is actually my favorite. This is how actually we started. How many of you have used Uber, Ola, or Swiggy, Zomato in last 1 year or 1 month? Almost all of you, right? So basically, in 2022 or not 23, sorry, I'm still getting used to it. 2023, when you're sitting in Ahmedabad, you can find out where the taxis are available within half a kilometer of your radius. You can find out where the best sandwich or best pizza or bhaji pav is available. Not only you can find that out, you can click on it, you can order it to be delivered here within 20 minutes or less. How many can you find out where remdesivir is available right now? Can anybody find out that? No. You would think that after all we went through over the last 3 years, we should be able to find out that. Like, don't you think remdesivir is more important than pizza? So we can find that out. That's what we are doing. You as a patient, right now, in Ahmedabad, you can search for product and we'll tell you exactly the pharmacy name, address, phone number. He's laughing at me because he knows what I'm talking about. And that are available, right? So that's what we're doing. Why? Because we invested heavily in this infrastructure. So that's for the patients. What else is for the patient? Find alternatives. Doctor wrote you something, you can't afford it unfortunately. You want to find generic, there's a big push in generic market in India over the last few years. I mean, I did not visit India quite often up until recent years, up until really COVID actually, ironically. And one thing I noticed, there's a lot of push from every way possible into generics. So we help patients to find alternatives. You can afford something, you can find something cheaper, which is exact composition, and so on and so forth. What else? Well, like I said, you can store your complete medication profile, all the things you're taking. But not only that, you can actually store your vitals, and hence the name of the company actually. That's where it came from. Vitals. You can store your oxygen levels, BMI, sugar, blood pressure, all of that. But not only you can store that, you can share with one click to your pharmacy or your doctors or anything you want. Right? So that's the patient side. So we do both. We help pharmacies, we also help patients. So our whole thesis is how can we use technology to build up. Again, going back to the example I gave, that the knowledge is not enough. Being able to share that knowledge in a scalable manner is all the technology is about. In fact, all of your young minds right there, they can relate to me. It's not like the talent did not exist before. Talent exists before YouTube and TikTok, well, not TikTok anymore, but Instagram Reels came about, right? You knew the talent existed before, right? But what happened? The talent got accessible, right? The information became accessible. The pharmacopoeia existed long time ago, but it was just one copy in library somewhere sitting, now it became accessible. So that's what we do. We use technology to make the specific information that we have to available and accessible to the communities. Let's see. So how far are we along our journey? We are currently being used by 2,500 plus pharmacies in India. We have 10 lakh, 1 million for my US friends. 10 lakh plus patients registered on the platform, so we have medication history stored for 10 lakh plus patients. 90 lakhs plus prescriptions have been fulfilled so far. We have a product catalog of 3.75 lakhs of 375,000 different medications. We have the database and FFCC products as well, because in India pharmacy use Well, US does that too, right? In fact, more than pharmacy, they sell it outside. We are also working with the NHA, National Health Authority, to do two things. One, to help them build that database that we talked about. So we are actually in talks of donating that database to NHA, where they can actually start implementing the same catalog to other healthcare touch points like hospitals and doctors. And second thing we're working on is actually creating standard for e-prescriptions, right? So one of the key points I skipped over, that's the first one, which I should really put as the last. There is a company named eVitalRx. They're based in Bangalore. They build EMR software. So they build software for the doctors. We have integrated with them. And what that means? That means that any doctor that uses eVitalRx as an EMR software, they can write a prescription and send a prescription directly to any of our participating 2,500 plus pharmacies, right? So again, you can relate to SureScript, like SureScript can channel your prescription from doctor to a pharmacy or the pharmacy to the insurance company and so on and so forth. So we are working with NHS to create an e-prescription standard so that other EMR software can also adopt that kind of standards. So that's kind of what we do. This is one thing I'm going to briefly talk about later on, but we are also starting a certification program for the students, 100 hours theory plus practical, suitable for anybody who's really interested into community or retail pharmacies. For also, again, focus is partly on using the software to help patients and partly on using the software to run your pharmacy operations. What help do we need? So, one of the things I didn't want to just talk about what we do, because this is a great opportunity for me to, ask for help that I need. If you are running or working with pharma companies, what do we need? We need product catalog, right? If you're launching a product, you can work with us. You can directly give us the product catalog. Say these are the products that we're launching. This is the formulation. This is the API composition of the product. So we would love to collaborate on that. If you are registered pharmacies or academics, like I said, we need help for technical knowledge base, right? So information base that we're building. Just like I started the whole presentation saying I don't know any drug-drug interactions, so you need to help me out here. University administration, training and skill department, like I talked about earlier, development. We are working on developing a certification program. And if you are a regulatory person, compliance and monitoring, right? All the pharmacies are required to file certain Schedule H, drug reports, so on and so forth. They have to renew their licenses. We can directly work with the regulatory bodies to provide that kind of reports automatically. It's all on cloud. One of the things I didn't really talk about is how the whole thing is in cloud. So with one setup, we can dump all the reports to any regulatory agency that you want to work with. So that, if you are interested in exploring any of that, you can speak to me afterward. Now, this is the last thing I want to talk about. And why am I building this? Right? I said earlier that I don't remember any structures. I don't like to remember any drug-drug interactions. Like, why am I doing all this thing? Right? The last bullet point is just really something I'm trying to hide, but the truth of the matter is I never worked in a pharmacy. I never worked in a pharmacy, not even for one day. Not even for one day. Not in India, not in US, never. Right? Never. So why am I doing this? I mean, if you look at my profile, I graduated from here, never looked back. Dr. Mumta, Dr. Goswami, I was a student in there, right? Never came back to college either until recently, last few years, right? I'm going to be honest. Was that? No. Last year maybe I came, but maybe. But the reality is that I never really was into pharmacy. I got into finance, I ran a hedge fund, and I did some technology investments. So what happened? And that's a bit of a personal story that I'm saying for the first time actually to any outsider. The person who's worked with me, they kind of know it, but for the outsider I'm saying it the first time. So this is really a difficult moment for me. So why am I building this? Why do I care about the community pharmacy suddenly after 13 years, right? Like why do I pretend to care the profession that I was never into? So this is my friend next to me, Hardik Patel. So Dr. Hardik Patel, I should say. He was a B.Pharm from Pune. He did PhD in USA. He did postdoc at a cancer research hospital that most of you might recognize, Sloan Kettering in Manhattan. He did about 7 years of research there. And then he was a pharmacist, registered pharmacist, practiced pharmacy, owned pharmacies in Bronx and Manhattan, Upper Manhattan as well, for about 5+ years, right? My best friend, that's the trip we took, last trip we took together, 2017. And by the way, the whole idea we sort of conceived, I was talking to Abuala earlier in the lunch, that we conceived the whole idea in the US to do it, and then we decided to do it in India. During all these conversations that I've had with him, I'm still in finance, I'm still pure capitalist as it comes. I'm still pure capitalist, to be honest with you. But he was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, which is a very, very, very rare type of liver cancer. And the irony is, he spent 7 years as a cancer researcher, and he turned out to be a patient at the same hospital that he used to be a researcher at. And he was 37 back then, I think. But here's where it gets interesting. He also worked, like I said, he worked as a pharmacist. He passed away right at the onset of COVID, April 2020, leaving behind 2 young kids and a wife. Like I said, my best friend. This is what happened. This is why I wanted to talk about. One of his patients at the pharmacy set up, because they were talking to, the patient, how it becomes very familiar with them. He knew that when he found out about the cancer, and he was a cancer researcher, the hepatic cholangiocarcinoma is a very rare form of cancer. There's no research being done. So he wanted to set up something for the research purpose. One of his patients at the pharmacy set up GoFundMe, and they raised $50,000, more than $50,000. They had to stop the campaign because they already reached the limit. All of that came from his patients at the pharmacy. Why? He died 12th April 2020. He was working as a pharmacist until January of that year, until 3 months before it passed. I didn't want to put his picture, it was really impressive. But that came from his patients. And what he told me is, he really did an amazing job as a pharmacist. Right? Of course, he's the best friend for me. Of course, he's a great father and all that stuff. But imagine your patients putting together $52,000 fund because a pharmacist that they were getting service from died out of this such a tragedy. And that's what told me that how important of a role that one pharmacy can play for their patients. The patients love it so much. Right? I went through all the list of all the donors. I don't recognize any of them. They're all their patients. And the patients who put in $500, $1,500. That's when you know that it is an amazing job as a community pharmacist. And that's when I knew that what if I want to put a Dr. Hardik Patel at each and every pharmacy? I can't do that. One, there was only one Hardik Patel. And two, I'm certainly not that good. What do? Well, what if I work with minds like him, an empathetic person like him, and use that knowledge, use the technology that I understand, and spread it across all the pharmacy of India, and that can help all these patients and all these people. So that's exactly why we started. That's exactly why I started caring about this profession again once, but I never cared before that. But that's the story. That, like I said, this is the first time I'm sharing. So that's exactly what we did. Thank you so much. I'll be more than happy to work on